Homes to hedge funds. The historical commodification of housing and architectural intervention. In the annals of human history, housing ideologies have undergone profound transformation, evolving from a basic necessity to a complex commodity at the center of our economic systems. This documentary explores the historic commodification of housing and its intricate relationship with the rise of capitalism, taking a focus on the architectural responses to the ever-changing societal norms and how they impacted the urban landscape and social structures of their time. Beginning in the 19th century, as cities swelled with workers seeking employment, housing became increasingly divorced from traditional social relationships. The European enclosure movement and colonial land seizures marked the early stages of privatization, setting the stage for housing's transformation into a tradable asset. In the early 20th century, modernist ideals and rapidly evolving technologies influenced housing development, while the Great Depression led to the implementation of federal housing policies. Whilst the Western countries during this time were facing significant capitalist downturns, the East, in particular the Soviet Union, were facing significant housing ownership and typology changes from family style to communal style due to the 1917 Russian Revolution. The post-World War II era saw financial uncertainty and an influx of returning citizens, prompting various housing initiatives aimed at addressing the urgent need for accommodation. The latter half of the 20th century witnessed significant shifts in housing commodification. Urban decline and deindustrialization in the 60s and 70s, coupled with inflation and rising interest rates, led to the promotion of homeownership as a means of wealth building. This period saw a fundamental change in how housing was perceived, transitioning from a basic need to an investment opportunity. The 80s and 90s saw financial deregulation, which further accelerated the commodification process. These changes allowed for more complex financial instruments related to housing, including mortgage-backed securities and real estate investment trusts, which increased the financialization of the housing market. In the 2000s and 2010s, the privatization of public housing and the rise of global cities intensified housing commodification. Urban areas became increasingly attractive to international investors, driving up property values and often pricing out local residents. The global financial crisis of 2008, largely triggered by the housing market, highlighted the risks associated with treating housing primarily as a financial asset. More recently, the COVID-19 pandemic and widening inequalities in the 2020s have further exacerbated housing issues. The pandemic has exposed and amplified existing housing insecurities, while also reshaping housing preferences and work-life patterns. These ongoing challenges underscore the complex nature of housing commodification in the modern era and the need for balanced policies that recognize housing as both a basic human right and an economic asset. Amid these growing commodification pressures, architects and designers throughout history have explored innovative responses to housing that challenge these market-driven dynamics and reimagine how spaces can better serve communities. Jean-Baptiste André Gaudin's Familistère, constructed between 1856 and 1859, represented a radical departure from the prevailing commodification of housing during its time. According to Kenneth Frampton, Gaudin was known to have absorbed the more radical aspects of Fourierism by showing how the system could be adapted to cooperative family living without resorting to the eccentric theories of passional attraction. Showing through his work in Familistère and unlike traditional workers' housing developments that emphasized individual ownership, the Familistère was based on collective rented housing, providing equal living conditions for all residents, regardless of their factory role. Gaudin himself resided among his workers, breaking hierarchical norms common in capitalist enterprises. The architecture of the Familistère emphasized open spaces, light and communal areas to foster interaction and collective living, reflecting Gaudin's belief that architecture could influence behavior and contribute to social reform. This innovative approach to housing and community design stood in stark contrast to the profit-driven, individualistic housing models of the time. In 1880, Gaudin transitioned ownership of the Familistère and his factory to a cooperative association of capital and labor, allowing workers to participate in decision-making and share ownership, thus challenging traditional capitalist hierarchies even further. The Familistère remained operational until 1968 and now serves as a historical site, exemplifying how industrialists like Gaudin attempted to reform capitalism by prioritizing workers' welfare over profit maximization, philanthropy with practical social experimentation. As capitalism continued to grow through the West, Eastern countries were experiencing varying ideological revolutions, and thus architectural identities were evolving and reacting differently to that of the West. The Narkomfin building, designed by Moise Ginsberg and Ignati Milinis in 1928, was a bold response to the commodification of housing, offering a radical alternative based on collective living and socialist ideals of the Soviet Union. During this time, Ginsberg led a research group for the standardization of housing, in which developed a series of Stroikum units, one of which was used in the Narkomfin building. This constructivist manifestation aimed to create communal housing that resisted capitalist private property norms by incorporating shared spaces and minimizing private areas. The design featured innovative elements such as internal hallways, stacked living units, and communal facilities like kitchens, laundries, and recreational spaces. By reimagining the traditional apartment layout, the Narkomfin building sought to foster a new socialist way of life in line with that of the 1917 Russian Revolution, encouraging community interaction and challenging conventional notions of private ownership. This unique approach not only addressed the pressing housing needs of the time, but also served as a prototype for future collective housing projects, influencing architects worldwide, including Le Corbusier. Vienna's affordable housing projects, initiated during the Red Vienna period of the 1920s, was a bold response to the commodification of housing. Under the leadership of the Social Democratic Workers' Party, the city launched an ambitious program to construct affordable, high-quality housing for its working-class residents. Renowned architect Adolf Loos played a crucial role in this initiative, heading the settlement office in 1921 and advocating for a utilitarian, minimalist design approach that rejected bourgeois excess. This socialist-driven project aimed to decommodify housing by providing affordable homes to a significant portion of the population, with over 60,000 units built between 1923 and 1934. The program not only addressed the acute housing shortage, but also served as a powerful statement against the rising tide of fascism in Europe, with many housing complexes named after prominent socialists, labor leaders, and anti-fascist activists. By prioritizing the needs of the working class over profit-driven development, Vienna's affordable housing initiative stood as a radical alternative to the commodification of housing prevalent in capitalist societies of the time. Although the Karl Marx Hof building pictured on screen is not directly designed by Adolf Loos, but rather Karl Ehn, it is a depiction of the aforementioned movements created by Loos, but on a monumental scale. Le Corbusier's Unité d'Habitation, completed in 1952, was a revolutionary response to the post-World War II housing crisis and the commodification of living spaces. This pioneering project proposed standardized housing blocks that balanced functionality with collective living, creating a self-sufficient vertical town. The design incorporated Le Corbusier's 5 points of architecture, including pilotis that encouraged interaction with the natural environment and improved accessibility between the building, community, and nature. Driven from an idea of a vertical garden city, the introduction of multi-level spaces and split-level apartments on a much grander scale than anything Le Corbusier had done before allowed for bilateral views, improved cross-ventilation and daylighting, challenging the typical brutalist aesthetic. The verticality of this project also facilitated balconies that acted as privatized outdoor space as a respite from the public all-in-one community approach that the rest of the building offered. This social experiment and prototype for mass-produced housing and community living would go on to inspire architects for decades, showcasing how brutalist design could incorporate natural spatial qualities and foster a sense of connection among residents and with their surroundings. Evidently, Le Corbusier was influenced by that of Moise Ginsberg's Narkomfin building through the ideas of a social condenser promoting community interaction and collective living, as well as stacked spatial planning minimizing corridors and points of low interaction. Not only did Le Corbusier pull influences from others, but his work in Unité d'Habitation went on to influence projects for decades to come. Robin Hood Gardens project was one which sought influence from Le Corbusier. Designed by Allison and Peter Smithson in 1972, the project sought to resist the commodification of housing by emphasizing communal living and social connectivity. The estate's design revolved around a central green space, symbolizing a shared community resource amidst the encroaching pressures of market-driven urban development, and an output not only from the Smithsons, but as a collective output driven from the Team 10 movement. The architects introduced Streets in the Sky, a showcase of brutalist architecture and parameters set by materiality through wide elevated walkways that were intended to foster neighborly interactions and provide spaces for children to play, challenging the notion of housing as purely functional or profit-driven. By offering a mix of 1- and 2-story apartments with varied layouts, the Smithsons aimed to accommodate diverse socio-economic groups, creating an inclusive environment that stood as a counterpoint to capitalist housing trends. Although criticized for its brutalist aesthetic and eventual neglect, Robin Hood Gardens embodied a vision of housing as a communal and social asset rather than a commodified product. Toyo Ito's Commodified Housing Study Group, launched in 1981, was a direct response to the changing landscape of housing in post-war Japan. As Japan transitioned from industrialized housing production to a commercialized, consumer-driven market in the 1970s, Ito recognized the need to bridge the growing gap between architects and the housing industry. The study group aimed to create a new type of consumer product that was neither a traditional architectural work nor conventional prefabricated housing. This initiative reflected Ito's understanding of the postmodern shift towards customizable homes that catered to the desires of a mass consumer society. By focusing on commodified housing, Ito sought to redefine the role of architects in a rapidly changing market, addressing the perceived failure of the experimental golden age of the 1970s to produce lasting impact on Japan's urban development. Through this project, Ito attempted to reconcile architectural expertise with the commercial realities of housing production, aiming to create innovative solutions that could meet the demands of both consumers and the construction industry. Jaja Architects' Almenbolig Plus initiative, exemplified in the Nordrafeld Kvarteret project, tackles the commodification of housing by prioritizing affordability, flexibility, and social sustainability. Drawing on modernist principles of evolutionary technology and materials, the project uses a modular prefabrication system centered around a core for wet rooms and technical installations, enabling cost-effective construction and adaptable configurations. This allows for diverse housing typologies, ranging from detached homes to 4-story buildings, as seen in Nordrafeld Kvarteret. By offering 8 distinct housing layouts within a fixed low-cost framework, the project ensures affordability while fostering demographic diversity and resisting the uniformity typical of commodified housing. Social sustainability is enhanced through flexible designs that allow residents to personalize their homes, promoting a sense of ownership and community. The mix of housing types encourages varied social groups to coexist, creating vibrant neighborhoods. The Nightingale Housing Project directly responded to the commodification of housing by redefining homes as spaces for living rather than investment assets. Founded by Breathe Architecture, the model challenged profit-driven real estate practices by prioritizing affordability, sustainability, and community building. Homes were sold at cost through a transparent ballot system, excluding investors and ensuring owner-occupiers could access housing without speculative price inflation. Nightingale also capped resale profits to discourage flipping and promote long-term stability. Its triple bottom-line approach emphasized financial, environmental, and social sustainability, integrating features like carbon neutrality, shared amenities, and proximity to public transport. By fostering collaboration with architects, local councils, and community housing providers, Nightingale projects increased affordable housing stock while maintaining financial viability. This innovative model disrupted traditional property development and demonstrated that housing could be equitable and environmentally conscious without being commodified. So, when reflecting on the past historical projects and architectural responses to housing commodification pressures, with a realist view on the current and future projections, do we draw on principles such as centralized, naturally lit communal spaces as introduced in Le Familistère, or the introduction of the social condenser, collective living space of the Moise Ginsburg Nachempfind building? Adolf Loos's functional arrangement of space to drive form and exploration of advanced technology for construction efficiency, evolved stacked and interlacing arrangement of private spaces as created by Le Corbusier to maximize occupant comfort, or the Smithson and Team 10 exploration of design parameters created from material limitations and inward-facing spaces for promotion of communal interactions? Or is it a theoretical combination of all the above and adapted through various ways and applied to modern context, as seen from Toyo Ito theories, to Jaja architect concepts and the Nightingale visions? Being able to comprehend and apply these principles is becoming ever more crucial for a successful response to the rising commodification of housing. On a local level, we can see that housing commodification and house prices has followed the global pressures and patterns through intervals that have been discussed throughout this documentary. And therefore, there is only one question that remains, and as designers, occupants of the built environment, and residents to our cities and urban realms, what's next for Australian housing, and how do we respond?